when it goes out. So, well, I've been introduced, but I repeat it again. My name is Javier Rodríguez. I am from Santander. Raise your hand if you're from Santander. Good. Now, I'm responsible for the intelligence and fraud department at Logic, and actually my background is in the public sector, the operative central unity. Well, in a nutshell, this is what I used to do. Okay, this is the classical police work, and this is what I'm doing now. The difference between the two may seem huge, but it's actually very small. The company I work for works on cybersecurity, amongst other things. I don't know if you've ever done pen testing, auditing, consultancy. Well, if not, you will probably do this kind of thing in the future. Pen testing, which are attacks that go a long time, and then the intelligence, the red team I was talking about, and then the intelligence that is really, really important. Since we have a lot of attendance here, I'm going to say a few things about Cantabria. We are from Cantabria, which means people from the mountains. It's a pretty rainy area, and this is the price we have to pay if we want to have this beautiful greenery. We have a lot of good stuff. For example, sobaos. I don't know if you've tried them, because they are delicious. Santander, the mountains, and some more things that I would like to take the opportunity to talk about. I've worked in Madrid for several years, but something I notice is that we are never present in the weather forecast. That's something I always wonder, or why our traditional dishes get different names in Spain. We also have particular words that we only use on this part of the world. So now I'm going to go to the nitty-gritty. Cyberintelligence, what is it about? Well, this is probably one of the most widely used terms in cybersecurity. We're going to talk about intelligence, about cyberintelligence. We're going to define what is not cyberintelligence. We will see an example of industrial espionage, and then we will draw some conclusions. First of all, what can we know? Or what can we say about cyber intelligence? Here we have some headlines. Cyber intelligence goes one step beyond in cyber attack preventions, blah, blah, blah. You've probably heard about it. It seems that cyber intelligence is there. It is taking care of us, almost like a mom takes care of her child, as in this picture. It's something that protects you. Well, let's begin by defining intelligence. Once we do that, and once we understand what intelligence is, we will apply it. We will apply the concept to cyber intelligence. Intelligence is providing useful information, and I underline useful because a 200 pages report may not be useful. So useful information that enables decision-making or the modification of a decision. So this is the important thing. It is a useful thing that saves time to decision makers. I have a problem, I receive some kind of data that help me make the right decisions. Therefore, I reduce uncertainty. Intelligence has been a widely used word throughout time, but it was Sherman Kent, the father of the intelligence as we understand it today. He worked at the OSS, the predecessor of CIA, during the Second World War, big trouble. Very troublesome times. So this guy would just collect information from the bad guys, so to say, the Japanese in this case, and he would turn that information into useful information for the command. That information enabled the command to make the right decisions. Once the world was over, he realized that this was his way of doing things, but there were many other ways of doing things. That's why he decided to write this book, Strategic Intelligence for American World Policy. What it basically says is let's set some rules. Let's turn intelligence into a discipline rather than an art, and let's shape it so that it can be applied to any field whatsoever. So this is a fundamental pillar, this book is. So he basically said that there are 4 main processes: direction, collection, processing, and dissemination. These are actually stages. We have the direction phase, that is someone coming up to me and saying, well, I have this problem, I need to know more about this. Then the next stage is about collecting information about that matter. Then there is an elaboration phase. An analyst or an expert will take that information and turn it into a report, present the product, so to say. Product is a synonym for report in the intelligence world. And finally, the dissemination. The dissemination that needs to go to the decision makers or the people who need that kind of knowledge. Sounds easy, doesn't it? So we are at home, we need to buy a drug, for example. So I research on the internet, I get some drugstores addresses, and then I buy what I need. Every country has its own cycle, and the National Intelligence Center in Spain has its own cycle, although they are all pretty much the same. There are several disciplines, for example, OSINT or searching the internet, but it's a bit more complicated than that. People think that intelligence is about this, a guy in a hat spying and stealing data, but it's rather more like what you can see on the picture. It's a vast amount of information that you need to analyze, understand, report on. That is a great problem. And finally, all this information is given to decision maker. So for the intelligence, we need specialized staff. This is not about sitting at my desk and collecting information, analyzing and giving the information away. It takes more than that. We need specialized staff who knows about how to collect, who knows about the collection technique, whether it is on the internet or looking for a pathway or a route in Google Maps, for example. And this is also human. Maybe you won't believe this in the 21st century, but it is so. I don't know if you've ever heard of a thing called a letter, that was a piece of paper folded inside an envelope and sent to somebody else. Well, this is what my grandfather used to do. Anyway, we need personal staff who are specialized in the analysis. We also need a cycle manager, the boss. That's very easy to find in Spain. And then the decision maker, the one that receives the final product and makes the right decision. That is a politician. In case we are talking about the public sector here, they all require specialization with the exception of the politician. So the decision maker may be the CEO in a company, it could be the pharmacist in your neighborhood, or it could be any of us. It's actually the person who has the final word. So what do we have up to now? Intelligence is about a series of processes related to the collection of information from several sources. They are then analyzed, reported, and disseminated to someone who needs that information. So this means, in order for you to do your work right, need to know about what I am doing. Do you need to know information from a report I can draft? It is as simple as that, but it causes a lot of problems at the same time. And especially in the private companies, as we don't have that mindset. So what can we do with intelligence? Many different things. Now you can attach the word cyber to any other word and it would make it look very modern. So anyway, we can have territorial intelligence, regulation intelligence, competitive or economic intelligence. That's what we're going to be talking about. Military intelligence as well. I have put this asterisk here because everything comes from the military. image intelligence, this is what we do with world maps. Where can I go and have a drink afterwards? And signal intelligence, and finally due diligence, which is nothing but investigating in order to find out more about what somebody is doing based on your interests. And then the cyber intelligence, which is everywhere. Here it is, and here is how we figure it out in our heads. Nobody can agree on what this really is about. We've seen that cyberintelligence is about a set of processes by which I collect, analyze, and generate a report. And what happens? This comes from the private sector, where we all are, and the public sector that would encompass the intelligence community, the National Intelligence Service, police, etc. So here are some definitions. We need to predict cyber attacks by recollecting information from the cyber world, the obtention of information from the cyberspace in order to process it, and many more definitions. So intelligence is everywhere. But cyber intelligence as such doesn't exist. It is all a lie. Well, there are a few nuances to it. The intelligence is all about cyberspace. So bear something in mind. Cyber intelligence is collected from human sources. What is the source? The human knowledge. I can see, or I can learn from somebody, from a place, and from the cyberspace. So cyber intelligence or cyberspace are not the goal, but a source of information. This is something that we need to bear in mind. Although the term has been evolving, there is an explanation to it, since now cyberintelligence is linked to the classical malware analysis. Well, my family are here watching me, so I would say to my mom, a malware is nothing but a virus. That is the bug that goes inside your computer and starts doing strange things, and then you have to call a friend to help you out. So it has to do with that and with processing information. The good thing about the computer science is that we can process vast amounts of information. So here is where the problems begin. If we have a problem, an attack affecting a computer system is giving us information about the technique that was used, but we don't know what happened, who did it and why they did it. I don't know if you've ever done reverse engineering or not. You're going to get some information. That analysis will tell you how good or how bad that virus is. It'll tell you a little bit more about the sophistication, etc., but you will never know who did it and why. So, what do we have? A technical information source, nothing but that. So I've seen on the internet many strange things, and I'm going to focus now where all these confusions arise from. This is something that we've created in order to explain this flow a little bit. We have the computer, my grandfather's computer here, which contains a virus. So the computer is running slowly or whatever. That virus is connected to a control panel that is telling the virus what to do. It's as simple as that. And then there is some hacker that is controlling everything. So we have 4 actors, although it looks like 4. The virus, my grandfather's computer, the control panel, and the hacker. So this is a very, very basic scheme of what a malware and a virus is. There are more complicated ones, but I think this is pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Okay, is it clear so far? So what's happening? Obviously, the more viruses I can analyze, the better. will be if I analyze 10,000 different computers. Well, I don't have 10,000 grandmothers, but anyway. So if I have access to lots of malware, I'll be very good, and I'll have a lot of information about these 10,000 pieces of malware. So the more information I'll have, the more I'll learn IP addresses they're connected to, and all sorts of viruses, technical information, because it comes from a technical analysis. And apart from this, we'll have many more things, and especially lots of information from open sources. In the records I see, there's a lot of information from open source internet, and not so open sometimes. So I keep these items. These are expensive and very expensive studies. So actually, what we have here is lots of information that's built around a virus or a system that's been attacked, but that's been breached. But here starts information. There are very bad people, Putin, etc., and other things like machine learning, etc. So what we're seeing is that the tendency is that I have a piece of software, I analyze it, and I'll say that I'm Russian. I'm a Russian guy. That's fascinating, right? And this comes from a Sherlock Holmes paradox, because he would say that he was in a building where there was a murder every day. So Sherlock Holmes would say it's been somebody from within, somebody inside. Why? Goes his colleague, because when somebody dies, the dog doesn't bark. So it's a solid evidence, Sherlock Holmes thing. So what happens with all this? What a cyberintelligence department normally does, or somebody who's into cyberintelligence, and please remember the aim of this, to provide useful information. There's a bunch of systems that do automatic software analyses, collect information, automated software that classifies this and that, and we've got a bunch of specialized people who analyze malware on the one hand, and people who go and look for the virus and disassembles it and puts it apart and everything. So basically, comes the event, and they take the piece of software or the computer, and they do a technical report. So the product they create, remember, intelligent product is a report. They are brilliant reports, because they take a virus, a malware, and they write an incredible report. But it's always the Chinese, the Indian, always Russians, and if quality is high, we go, it must be NSA. So through a software piece, I can elaborate all this, and if WikiLeaks agrees, then it must be true. And Putin's always there. Yes, say hello. And okay, so far so good. So we've looked at the definition, and I want you to take on the definition of intelligence, a classical definition, and what happens with cyberintelligence, which is something that's still coming. I mean, hasn't landed yet, not all the way. There's in the information that Putin must give us. And the best way to understand this is to use a case of industrial spying. And this is something that is happening. So these attacks do occur. So let's see, right from the time when somebody feels like attacking an infrastructure in order to obtain information, all the phases or stages he or she goes through until this reaches the analyst. For instance, I picked pharmacy industry, for instance, of pharmaceuticals. This company, this industry, this company operates in several countries. 70% of Spanish GDP is generated outside of Spain. Good thing about the crisis is that many Spanish companies said, well, we have to go international because we're not doing well in Spain. So here there are several research lines, and this company competes on an international level, something that's normally one doesn't need to go to two sophisticated companies in order to understand that there are smaller companies that go international, that go abroad. By abroad, I mean everything outside this region, Cantabria. It could be somewhere else in Spain. So this company's got a bunch of enemies. So physical security, for instance, physical security, but there's also computer security or cybersecurity. Here, well, so this is a company who operates abroad, normally has a risk map, whatever country they go to. So there may be somebody from the competition who's maybe backed or supported by governments or whatever, and a whole set of enemies. When I'm speaking about a competing company supported by our enemies, well, there are some companies with an economic intelligence sector, and for instance, a country will tell you, my companies, for me, are my GDP generating companies. So the more GDP they generate, the better. So you guys, with companies in Italy, the US, or whatever, if you work outside and bring money, I'll help you and I'll give you resources. There's lots of literature about this, and a lot of it is true, a lot of it isn't. But this is no secret, and it makes sense. So we are a pharmaceutical company B, and we operate in a given country. And for instance, we want to get some get some contracts, and we're competing for the contract of a patent in Australia. So I have a problem because I need to go to Australia, but it's not just me. There are going to be companies from other companies. In this case, a pharmaceutical company A. So we need intelligence, we need information, we need to know what that company is going to be doing. We want to know what the offer is going to be. We want to know about their infrastructure. I want to know it all. So there's trade, technical things. So the more information you have, the better. Is my country supporting me? Yes. So I have resources then available. We know that, for instance, China, when expanding abroad, what they do is to get information from other companies in order to create its own. I don't know whether you like the world of aviation. Well, I hate it because I'm scared shitless of flying. So in any case, and I'm saying this because Airbus, which is a European consortium, builds airplanes. So a model came out, the 320 mid-range airplane, Airbus 320. They came up with this model, and it took the Chinese 10 years to build one exactly like it. So they either stole and hired the whole engineering team from Airbus, or it was that their government was helping them, supporting them. So many people do these things, many countries. So what do I need? First of all, I need willingness and resources. So I want, and I know that I want to access data from pharmaceutical company B, and I have the necessary resources in order to do it. And if you have all these resources, it's great. And also great for the other company. So now we have a need, and the need is to know what's happening to pharmaceutical company A, so we can deploy all our resources, human resources, and interview workers who want to swap jobs, and other stakeholders. So right now we're in the physical world. I haven't said anything about cyber, nothing yet. So we simulate a bunch of things, and here and here, and we have OSINT, and the idea is to obtain data that are interested. and I'm pharmaceutical company B, and I don't want to be caught. So we speak about coverage. Coverage is like a lid, it's like a shield, it's like a cover. For instance, when I was little, I'd go home and my mother would say, "Have you smoked a joint?" No. Oops. Your breath, I can tell. Your eyes are bloodshot. So my mother would say, "I don't believe you." So coverage is something that's much more sophisticated. This means that the only thing that will avoid legal problems is having a good coverage. Resources. So we go back to resources. For instance, I have to set up a human resource company in order to hire workers who want to change job. This is very confidential because the worker who wants to who goes to an interview because they want to change jobs, but you don't know who they are. So pharmaceutical B. A is my problem, so I know who the CEO is. That is the boss. It's posh way of saying boss, CEO. So I can, well, depending on the company, I can do this for open source. I read the papers, I read this and that. And in other companies, when they operate and they go to other countries, they say it out loud. It makes sense. They want to be known, visible. So pharmaceutical company B says, well, I have what I want, and maybe I interviewed somebody who's just involved in the country, in the project. I have in Australia, maybe he or she told me everything that I wanted to know. So should we go on or not? Maybe I have to go on. I know that if I want to go on, I know who the company is. I know how they operate. The MO, for instance, information that comes from humans, this is highly credible. Information that comes from open sources, unless you do a good screening, many things could happen. For instance, you've been looking for something and you find 10,000 hits, 10,000 on the internet, and this is called Wikipedia, and this is called the echo effect. So I see this, I've obtained information, even though it's not vital, it gives me operational information from the company. So I'm here, so I have all this information, so I'm going to launch, I'm going to release, I'm going to go for this cyber attack. The idea is to get confidential information on specific projects. We have to know that in these cases we have a final objective. If I want to infect the whole world, what I want is money. If I infect this specific computer, first of all, it's because I wasn't able to do it differently, or because I want this computer. In order to do it, maybe I'll leave a whole bunch of traces. This is what's called lateral movement, whatever. Resources. Obviously, I need something that will allow me to infect, and this is the virus. And apart from this virus mustn't relate me or link me to anything. And also, it's got to be entertaining, and this means that we need maintenance. It's got to be user-friendly, and operations must be secure. Well, so the more people know about something, the worse it is. Here, the objective, the idea is not to be caught, and the virus must, or the whole operation, everything, that is the malware, has to be able to hide its objective. I've never seen anybody with something written on their foreheads saying, "I'm going to hack you." And it's going to be simple. We need to get away from complexities. It's going to be simple. So we have several options. We can buy an out-of-the-box virus, something that's prefab, and we can buy it with bitcoins, something that sounds horrible, I know. So you buy something that's already been that's ready-made, and either you can take your granddad's newspaper, or computer, and modify it. For instance, WannaCry. You know what WannaCry is? So some people took that virus, modified it, and put their things inside of it and sent it around the world. Or an ad hoc malware, that is something new. When somebody does something new, is that he, she hasn't been able to solve this with existing alternatives. After you have the malware, remember what I showed you at the beginning when I wanted to show you what a virus looked like. And then there's another thing called dashboard, or this is just a computer system that's linked to the virus, and it gives it instructions. Now you do this, now you erase, now this, now that. Simple so far. So I need to have to buy the server. I have to create the necessary infrastructure that will support my attack, and I need systems that will make me anonymous so that I won't be caught, and also creating malware in case I decide to create it. And there's another thing called a Stuxnet. Have you heard about Stuxnet? You know Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. You guys sleeping? Are you hungry? This is something that was created by the US and Israel because they had a problem, and that is that Iran was building an atom bomb. So what did Israelis do? And they said, am I going to bomb them, or should I create some sort of virus that will go into the nuclear plant in order to slow down their operations? And Stuxnet is precisely this. This was the first cyber weapon that was used for that objective, but well, they didn't tell you Stuxnet has been analyzed and reversed and everything, but what they don't tell you is that the coverage they used were the following. For instance, hey, I need a certificate. A certificate is like one of those passports that diplomats have, with a piece of virus that tells the system, I'm legal. So they took that certificate from China, from Taiwanese company. They stole it from a company. They said, listen, I've got this wonderful piece of software, but what do I do with it? So they collected lots of information, not technical information, but human information. So they collected lots of information to see how they could, where they could stick this. So we have everything. We know the company. And I always say the same thing. We want to act. The will is there, and objective is clear. So how do we get in? Well, this is a flowchart of the company, and this is what you can find. It's a large company with X workers. Now go in there to see what you do. We always think that the CEO is the important guy, or the boss is the important guy. But in our experience, after analyzing these things, maybe the secretary is more important than the CEO. That is, the CEO's secretary, or the people who are in charge of payrolls, or people who've been working for the company for 20 years, and normal guys, but all the information goes through them. This is something you don't see on the internet. On the internet, you may see a flowchart, but with other things. And there's another thing we need to understand, and that is emerging possibilities. Here, I've analyzed the people by person, what they do, what departments I can have, everything. well structured, but there's something called emerging properties. A company is a community of individuals who are sitting down around a common objective, and they make up a community. Communities include what we call emerging properties. An example, here we're all civilized, but if we go to the soccer stadium, all of a sudden you guys start going crazy, not because you're crazy, but because there's pressure. There's pressure. The community is changed because everything. So companies are not just made up by people, but communities of individuals change properties. So here we have a whole set of know-how, protocols, philosophy in a company, whether you believe it or not. But in the end, we all want to do different things, and we want to make a difference with what we do differently. And once I know about this, once I understand all this, and I'm not going to say who we're going to be hitting, but in any case, the only cyber thing we've done is the virus. And what the virus is the weapon I need in order to continue getting information. That's not the end of the virus. Infection vector. This is the gate I'm going to go in through. Is it a wall? What kind of gate is it? So we have two types of vectors. We have the recall rich, 0 day. That means that 0 days when your mother catches you when you say you were going to go somewhere or you were not going to go somewhere, and all of a sudden she catches you there. But in order to buy this, you need resources. And go back to the same thing. Do I need to do all this? Do I need to buy this cyber weapon in order to get this? Well, in general, no, you don't need to go that far. Some specific scenarios where perhaps you need to, but not always. And once we have the virus, I can do something, which is the classical operational things. I can go to a hotel and do something. Through some hacking technical procedures, I can go into a computer, I connect the computer. So, by the way, everything I'm telling you, I know that some of you look surprised, but it's true. The world is ugly. What happens outside our house is ugly. The world has changed a lot, and when my interests clash with yours, what I'll do is to take away what you have. For instance, hotels where information's been manipulated. For instance, somebody put hardware in your computer when staying at a hotel. So, and then we have the normal sort of vectors. When I want to do something and have the necessary resources, I don't say an email pretending that I'm Banco Santander when you're BBVA. You've no money in Banco Santander. So I need to have a coverage that's believable, because the idea is for you to believe me. So whatever my target is, whatever my objective, whatever, it's got to do something. There's going to be a click, and it's got to be realistic or believable. And who do I attack? For instance, when you throw water on the floor, water does something. You throw a glass of water on the floor, and you let the tap run, and water just runs. And this happens. This is the same thing that happens with the attacker. They're not going to go into complex things. No, they want things done easily, without having to spend too much resources.
In the case of Stuxnet, the Israeli virus we talked about, they said that the easiest way to go in was through suppliers. Companies have suppliers, people they trust, people they do business with, and with whom they have a special link. That's why the most dangerous attacks come through the suppliers. Suppliers are usually small companies, so there's something very easy that we can do. We can call them on the phone via social engineering and establish a relationship. We can ask, do you sell chewing gum? Well, I'm very interested in chewing gum. Maybe they also send products for the pharmaceutical sector, but that's not the matter. The matter is to establish a relationship, to start some kind of process that they can believe. In the past, we can use PDF or web files, any file, any sort of file we want. This is a bit more complicated because a 0-day, for example, doesn't require the interaction of people. So using the supplier trick, we go in, and this way we can obtain all the information we need related to that pharmaceutical company called A, and maybe information about company B too. So what's important here is that while this is all happening, our contact with the supplier continues because we don't want to be caught. So this company A has a wonderful Cyberintelligence department. And what do? Well, basically, at the Cyberintelligence department, people correlate computer-related events. They have a lot of things, they perform a lot of analysis, as we've explained before, but they haven't sniffed anything yet. I learn a lot from people from Red Team because they simulate this kind of attack a lot. And the truth is, they aren't aware of anything. And why is that? Because cyberintelligence today is focused on the technical side because that's like the solid, like the strongest part. Because if I am cyber attacked, that entails that there are a lot of phases that I haven't looked at before. Then there's the issue of alarms. You've probably been in the situation where your antivirus has popped up. So this means that the antivirus's intelligence has told you that you have a virus, but the problem is already there. That's not intelligence. Intelligence is about predicting that that is going to happen. Then the questions, basic questions on intelligence are the ones from Laswell's paradigm. Who says what to whom, through which channel, and with which goal? Because when I get the alarm from the antivirus, this means that the virus is already there. So as I said before, it's too late. So what do we have a few months afterwards, continuing with our story? Well, one of the sensors in the company generates an alarm based on a new rule that was created through cyberintelligence feeds. So at a development department, they develop forensic analysis, they detect malware, they create reports, etc. And what they say is that this is a very serious attack. Done by whom? By the Russians, of course. Here they are again. This pudding is so unlucky. I don't know if you know this fact, but Russia's GDP is the same as Italy's. They have the same resources, so they cannot do everything on their own. Or North Korea. Actually, it was on the news recently that there was this North Korea-related virus. So if you add to that some territoriality problems, you have the whole thing, you have the whole package. So, conclusions so far. We've been attacked. Nobody had noticed until the alarm went off. We've been reactive. That is, until it wasn't technically detected that there was a problem in the computer systems, nobody said anything about it. This means we are being reactive instead of proactive. I can't remember now the name of the attack to Google. I think it was 2011 or 12, all they suffer one every year. But the attack actually detected that one of Google's servers was over-interacting. That is more than what the usual metrics say. And after the research, well, they concluded that it was the Chinese. Well, at least these people have more resources. So that's what they assumed. But what is curious here is that the attack took place because somebody knew what the company was about, what the purchasing department did, what the programmers did, etc. And they were reactive in this case, so it happens to them as well. What is the conclusion? That, well, we've been attacked. We've had a virus for several months, and it's been doing things inside our systems. So this is what we have. Now, how does the intelligence team work? At least in my school, this is what we do. First of all, we need to have a team. Imagine we are competing for a contract in Australia. This is something known by the cybersecurity expert. We have technicians, intelligence analysts, malware analysts, the guy who reads the newspaper, who's also very important. This is something I recommend. You have to read the paper every day, because if you read the paper every day, you know that you know what is going on in Australia, and you know that your company is going to be competing there. So, another important thing is that a malware analyst is not an intelligence analyst, and this is something I very strongly defend. A malware analyst is the one who can tell you how the software works. They can tell you what relation the software has with other software. But there are other things that they cannot do. We also need to understand what the emerging properties of the companies are. That is, are we involved in international operations? Have we identified our potential attackers? What do we know about ourselves? The physical classical security is dealt with, but not this part. In a nutshell, the goal here is to know where you are. If you know yourself and you know your enemy, you will be able to win all battles. If I know my company well, that is, I have done a great job already. Well, then I have to design intelligence scenarios. I criticize a lot intelligence. And sometimes you just need to forget about the computer and take your pen and your piece of paper. It was invented years ago, but it still works. So I have to design several scenarios. I have to decide a peaceful scenario, a scenario reflecting the beginning of the attack and cause, and others. These scenarios take place based on several conditions, that is, indicators. Now, going back to my example, how do I know that I'm going to go to this or this other shop or store in order to buy something? Well, because I like the shop, it has a good reputation, I like the people who shop in that place. Those are the indicators. So the next scenario is easy. The alternative future is easy. Either I buy or I don't buy. But if I decided to go to a shop, it is because I have several indicators in my mind which are pointing me to yes or to no. Intelligence has been turned into a discipline like criminology. That is a procedure that can be replicated. Probably sometimes you've met someone and you've gone like, I don't like this person, there's something weird about this person or about this company. Well, that thing you have in your mind needs to be translated into indicators, into scenarios, and list down why you like or dislike somebody or something. Then, as an analyst, there's something that can happen to you. If you support a soccer team, for example, you are always going to be biased. The result of the match is going to be biased to your perspective. So the more indicators I introduce to the scenario, the better. And those indicators may be either cyber, that is technically obtained, but I can also have all the sources of information. That is, intelligence has to go beyond. It is too easy to say it was Putin who did it. Therefore, we need to use analytic techniques. The classical analyst uses a lot of analytic techniques. These techniques were introduced in Spain by the National Intelligence Center, and they tried to implement the so-called self-deception. These techniques include, for example, GANTT diagrams. For example, if I go to the drugstore, it is because I have a need. I have gotten money. I have money in my purse. And then I go and buy. So here we have the three scenarios. In order to move forward to the next scenario, the first scenario needs to be completed. That is, if I go to the drugstore, it is because I have a need. And if I go to the drugstore, I need to have money. So if I don't have money, I don't go to the drugstore. So this is the flow we have to understand. Here is where the responses are. That's why the cyber part of it isn't the critical one here. I wanted to insist on the indicator design because it creates an awareness raising in the analyst. Thanks to those indicators, I will be able to know where I am, and maybe my decisions are less biased. Some analysts say that they believe in their instincts. That's okay, but this is more important because your instinct isn't or shouldn't be always right. So the indicators are a long list of assumptions, of hints, and all of them combined give you a global vision. That is, this seems very logical. Actually, Sherman Kent, the guy we mentioned before, was a historian, so maybe his background helped him structure his theory. So it is unavoidable to have that list of indicators. So in a nutshell, we are coming to an end. We need to understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures of our attackers. That is the ABC of intelligence. If I understand the tactics, the techniques, and the procedures, I will be able to generate alerts before the problem comes to me. That is, if I know somebody is interacting with my employees, if I know somebody is doing something and I am able to characterize that because of the previous intelligence I've had, because in a company there is a basic intelligence and this previous intelligence. So if I am able to design these strategies and the procedures for each enemy that I have identified, I can predict my enemy's movements. So this is not, and for this, it's very important to use your pen, your paper, to keep updated with international politics, with companies' policies, and many more things. If we are at this point, we will know what we need to keep an eye on in order to predict the next scenario. Then we can model or shape a threat and create alert states. And finally, the collection that we get from the cyber intelligence is a means, it's not the goal. And this is what I want to stress in this presentation. Conclusions. Intelligence is indeed important to an organization. Intelligence is always strategic, and it must always be proactive. That is, it has to tell me what is going to happen, not who's going to win the election. They have to give me estimated results. Cyber intelligence, understood as just the management of technical information, is useless, and it is reactive. Something that may not be pleasant to hear by some analysts is that an analyst isn't a professional trained in intelligence. For example, general practitioners in medicine are very good professionals, but they may not be the ones who find the vaccine against AIDS. They are both physicians, but they don't do the same thing. So I hope I've given you a broad idea of what cyber intelligence is, and please don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have. Thank you.
Todos a la vez no, ¿eh?
Please, not all at the same time. Then, if there are no questions, thank you very much and enjoy Santander. It is a wonderful city.